Thank you, folks. Please welcome back Ferne Perlstein, the director of the film, and the story producer, Bob Edwards. Thank you so much for coming out here tonight and being part of the conversation. There's so much to discuss after this film. Wouldn't you agree? I'm sure you'll go on discussing this all night if you weren't discussing it already. And watching the film now, it actually, I know like I had mentioned earlier that cancel culture is less a part of this election than I think it was in the past. We've maybe kind of gotten used to it. But it still resonates and relates to so much more that's going on in our world right now, and even just the Palestinian-Israeli conflict and everything that's going on there. I'm thinking about, there are solutions here. We need to communicate, and our community has been torn over this. So before we dive into that, I'm just planting some seeds, but let's start with really the beginning. Where did this all come from? How did this all start?
Well, so I must have showed The Last Laugh here at least 2 times. We had, we were here in discussion over it. There's a MSNBC series with Trevor Noah and Time. It's, Time, we know it as the magazine, but it's their film part called Time Studios. They have a series together, and Trevor Noah wanted to do one of them. They're not connected to each other, and he wanted to do one on cancel culture. And the head of Time Studios knew The Last Laugh, and he said, I have the perfect director for you. So I didn't approach them, they approached me based on The Last Laugh.
Nice. Can you share with the audience a little bit about what The Last Laugh is for those who haven't somehow missed that when it had its lovely release?
So The Last Laugh is about, how we use humor to deal with difficult topics and taboo topics, and it sort of looks at the Holocaust as one of the most off-limits topics for humor. And we follow a Auschwitz survivor who is now 100 years old, named Renee Firestone, and we filmed Mel Brooks and Carl Reiner and Judy Gold and Alan Zweibel and Rob Reiner and Sarah Silverman, all of these comedians talking about what goes too far, how we, and everybody of course had a different opinion and a different line of what was okay to say and whatnot. But because I had dealt with the film about humor and the line, that's how that was the connection to this film.
And I think there is a direct connection there. And it's interesting that film wasn't about cancel culture, even though it was about kind of like, passing those, when are you passing the lines? And,
right. Well, cancel culture was sort of not even, thought about when I made The Last Laugh. It was right as I finished it. I mean, I finished it and it premiered at the 2016 Tribeca Film Festival. So, but that meant I finished it in 2015. It changed a lot after the election. I had been showing it for 6 months before the election. Then it sort of changed how we were looking at it. But people weren't really talking about cancel culture then. They were talking about, it was the early days of talking about political correctness in terms of humor. It was the days where Jerry Seinfeld and Chris Rock didn't want to, perform on college campuses because of this political correctness coming on. So that's, it didn't really intersect yet with that film. Now I'm actually showing it at the Borscht Belt Film Festival this weekend, and it's definitely a very different film, even since last October.
Absolutely, and we'll dive more into that, but more into the process for a moment. So you're taking this huge topic of cancel culture. It's like, every day there's like there are lists of people being canceled every day. It's I'm sure there are many ways to update this film since your montage at the end. How did you go about the process? And Bob, maybe you could tell us a little bit about how you got involved, if you were a part of that process.
I got involved by living with Ferne. We have a
Gets you credit, you know?
yes, yeah, I got a credit in the film just for living with her. We have a sort of an office in our apartment, but for some reason, Fern does not want to edit in that office. She wants to edit in the living room. And so she cut this film in the middle of our apartment. And so we all lived, all of us, our daughter as well, lived with the process. And our 13-year-old daughter can quote this movie by heart still, even now.
But you are a story producer on the film,
Yeah.
so explain that.
Well, as you say, kidding aside, very difficult to cram all this into 45 minutes. It could be an 10-part series very easily, but that's a different beast. So I think, I don't want to speak for Fern, but having watched her, I think it was very challenging to try to touch all the bases that you want to touch, that people expect when you say it's going to be a film about cancel culture, when you only have that, constrained block.
And also, there's a big difference because this was a job for hire, right? I was hired to do this film. The Last Laugh had been a passion project that I had been trying to make since 1993. So I had final cut on that. I had, it was going to be the film I wanted it to be. For this film, it was, I worked very, very closely with the four executive, there weren't four executive producers, there were four companies who all had their executive producers. So I worked very closely, mostly with Trevor Noah's company, because it was, they're the sort of artistic partner of those four entities. But, it was within the scaffolding of what they wanted. I mean, it's a TV hour, so that's why it's 45 minutes. It had to hit these different points and quickly, and it was meant to be this sort of nuanced look at this conversation. I will tell you that when we had to decide, where I came in as the director is, okay, well, let's not have more than 9 or 10 people because we want to be able to hear them speak. We wanted to have people who were canceled, but nobody who's been canceled wants to talk. We got these, you can see everybody that we talked to has a small cancellation story, but, other than the professor, but people just don't want to revisit it. If they're on the other side of it, they don't want to go back. So that was one of the harder parts of it.
And I found it really interesting that you managed to actually show both sides of canceling, that the canceling is not just from the progressive side or the conservative side, it's really from both of those sides. What did you, this is kind of a jump, but going through all of this, entering, this world of cancellation, what did you learn from the process that you didn't know coming in?
Well, what I didn't realize is we've been canceling people since the beginning of time, right? It's the addition of social media that has turned it into cancel culture. Like the Scarlet Letter, Joe McCarthy, all these things have been around forever. So, but I do feel like this whole the reason cancel culture is such a hard topic for people is because I think it really is this sort of, it shows us what is happening in this divided time, right? The tribalism that, you've got the left, who's overreacting possibly, and you've got the right who is, saying cancel culture is the worst, but they're canceling too. They're banning books. They're doing all these things. So, they're just calling it something different. So this is like a living example of the division, I feel like, and how people are stuck in their sides and they're having parallel dialogues, parallel monologues that aren't a dialogue.
And this is what's going on everywhere in our world right now. And I love Loretta Ross's comment at the end of talking about restorative justice and listening and hearing, and on all sides, both those who were hurt and those who did the hurting, and to put in that process. I really thought that was like, we're coming out of this movie with actually one of the most important lessons to our society right now. We don't have enough of that.
Yeah. Well, we have a 13-year-old daughter, and I feel like you were talking about this the other night with your book, but they're the ones that are going to get us to the next place. They are learning about restorative justice. They are learning about, they're coming into this world with a less tribalized view of everything, I think. No?
That's hopeful.
Do you agree with
Well, I think I agree with you about Loretta's comment at the end. It's very hopeful and optimistic, but like Graham Wood's comment about a mechanism for forgiveness, those things depend on people acting in good faith, right? So if cancellation at its best is just accountability and the market speaking, and if you say something that offends some people, those people will respond accordingly, and it's not used vindictively, vengefully, and so forth, and people do have empathy and can understand and let the punishment fit the crime, and not every off-color joke deserves a death penalty. That's doable, and I think that's what Loretta's getting at.
And I'm going to open it to questions from the audience, but I will say, and I'll bring in my 2 cents here, in terms of like really talking about this past year, that on the campuses, where you see this lack, a place where we're meant to learn and we're meant to communicate, there's this lack of, you went with one side, you're out. You went with the other side, you're out. And we really need those spaces for that real restorative communication, and it's going to be a process. Now we bring you into this. Go easy on us, and we have a microphone, so we'll pass that around. I see a hand up in the middle. No, please. Just also because we record the conversations, and so everyone can hear.
I was just thinking that when the safe space box, which I thought was kind of hilarious, but you're taking it around Manhattan, which is a very skewed place to take a safe space box. And I was thinking, like, if you took this in another state, what would be the reactions of people going into that safe space? What would they actually be saying? I just feel like, Manhattan is such a more open-minded place to be putting the safe space box.
Yeah, although you're absolutely right, and we did not have the funds to take it outside of New York, but we did really just ask people who they would uncancel, and we got the whole gamut, right? We'd have, and these things are always moving targets because something, the day before we film it, somebody just got canceled, or someone was just in the news, or Kanye had just said some really anti-Semitic things. So we got a lot of, well, I would uncancel Kanye, although I know he's an anti-Semite, but, we got a lot of, So I do agree with you if we were using it to have people, admit to the things that were more personal, but we weren't using it that way for the very reason, because we knew, being in New York, we were limited.
I'm just wondering how you picked your talking heads.
So like I said, we worked really closely with Trevor Noah's team, and we knew we wanted certain categories. We knew we wanted a professor. We knew we wanted comedians, right? Because comedians have a very different relationship with cancel culture than anybody else. We knew we needed an academic who was, the expertise on restorative justice. So basically, we knew the different categories we needed to fill, and we, pursued it from there. But like I said, the only category we really had trouble with was people who were canceled.
I just have a question.
We'll pass you a
One moment,
microphone.
sorry.
Give us a second.
Please define restorative justice.
Please define restorative.
Please define restorative justice.
So restorative justice is a thing that's very popular in schools and universities right now, where you basically take the two parties that are at odds and you put them in dialogue and try to sort of help them, restore, what the problem is.
Yeah, and I don't think, there's a lot of different ways that it's applied. I don't think that it's used as a substitute for punishment. So, for example, in a school, if a student breaks the rules and crosses a line, they may still be punished, but they're trying to make it more than just the punishment. They're trying to help the person that did the offense to maybe understand and take some accountability, and also give the offended party a chance to sort of have some closure.
I'm looking to test it out on my children and see if this can work.
She has a follow-up.
I see.
So then where do you place the removal of the Theodore Roosevelt statue in front of the Museum of Natural History? Yeah.
Well,
No, I don't think that's at all. I don't think it has anything to do with restorative justice. It's an example of cancellation, right? He was canceled. You can agree with it or disagree with it, but yeah, that fits in the cancellation bucket.
We got a few more here.
I wonder how you fit what happened on college campuses after October 7th into cancel culture, because I can't make it work.
yeah.
I think we're out of time.
Well, I will tell you that we finished this film early October, right? Early October 2023.
Just in time.
And then, but I mean, quite literally, what the examples are when there was doxing, when they were giving out people's home addresses, and that is a form of cancellation, or it's not a form of cancellation so much as a negative thing that comes out of cancellation.
I mean, certainly, we're glad we didn't have to deal with that in the film, because it would have overwhelmed the film, right?
Well, because ours was a history of cancellation and explaining the nuanced look at it, and that is an example of it gone to an extreme.
Yeah, there's no doubt that as a case study in cancellation, you could hardly ask for something more volatile or complex in terms of the stakes, the human tragedy, the suffering. And then you had people, I don't want to use the term both sides, but there were all kinds of people with all kinds of opinions who were being attacked and shut down, sometimes legitimately, sometimes not. So complicated, it could never fit in this film. It's talk about an 8-part series. That is a Ken Burns length fraught topic.
However, I think it's a conversation starter to that, right? It is, okay, now you understand where it all comes from. Now we can talk about it.
You do what we're doing right here. You show them a movie, and now let's be able to talk about it and try to fix it all. We're going to take. There's 2 more comments. I saw one up here, one there. Maybe we'll take. Okay, there's a lot of hands. We're having a conversation. We don't want to silence anybody.
So when I thought of cancellation, it's when you were hired for a job, but then, or to be on stage or speak at a university, and then people protest, or you find out some things you didn't know about them, and then they're not allowed to do what they do. What it used to be okay is you protest, you use your voice to protest what they're doing, or you don't pay and you don't buy a ticket and you don't go. In the case of Judy Gold, who I love, and I saw her face, I said, I'm going to see that. I don't see how she fits in the cancellation bucket. She said something about Hasidic women that Hasidic women were offended at, and they used their voice and they tweeted, and you're making us vulnerable to attack or whatever. But I don't think she ever lost.
We didn't
a job over that.
Right. No. We didn't interview Judy because she was canceled. We interviewed Judy because she wrote a book and did a one-woman play on free speech. And she has a lot to say about cancel culture and comedy. So she's sort of an expert on the topic. That's why we interviewed her. She had a small story that could have, that got her canceled within the very Orthodox community, but that is not why we chose to film her.
It looked critically at the very Orthodox community for speaking out and saying, we're offended by what you said. And I thought they had the right to do that.
They did have the right
I
to
think
do
even
it.
Judy says they have the right to do that.
So that wasn't part of cancel culture.
Well, it is, though. It is a part of it, but
Because Judy's book is called Yes, I Can Say That.
Right, and yes, the women who wear.
exactly.
And
Well,
this
that's
is where
what
we
we're-
lose
that's what the
control over the
film-
conversation.
But I will say that the film says, I mean, the part of it is like if there's somebody who is a professor and he says something really anti-Semitic, you know, there might be students or parents of students or whatever who try to get that person fired. You know, they have, you know, that's what we're talking. It's a we.
Opposite. Shai Davidai was fired or on leave from Columbia.
Right. If you're saying something that's that's not really going with whatever the administration wants to hear right now,
Right.
you
Sometimes it's fair and sometimes it's unfair.
Yeah, but there's
be
like
relieved.
there's no Department of Cancellation that lays down the law and that's the rule. A person can, as we say in the film, a person can be canceled with a certain demographic and lauded and celebrated and lionized by another one for the exact same incident.
But I will emphasize, yes, this has been going on forever, and you know, you go back to Jesus there, but it's really also about the culture of it specifically. Canceling. I mean, people have been fired, people have been criticized. I think what the movie really is exploring and emphasizing is what we have right now, which possibly relates just to the social media element of it, is this culture of cancel and
People jumping on and you know, from their basement or whatever, hidden behind, you know, social media, have this bravery to just say these things that they probably wouldn't say in person.
we're going to take one more up there.
No pressure. That's the last question. I was just kind of interested in. So you were talking about a lot of the front end of it, so the cancel culture. But I was interested in there seem to be at least 3 different things that people get cancelled for. One was comedy that goes too far. One is genuine, sort of full-on comments. So either Kanye or the professor, they're both saying things that they intend to say. And then the third thing is sort of Michael Jackson or Louis C.K. So things that you actually do, which may or may not be. I mean, those two happen to be illegal things. And so I was wondering whether there's a difference for you in that type of cancellation. So it seems you're talking about a process which takes whatever they're understood and forward. But I wonder whether it makes a difference what you're getting cancelled for, at least in those 3 different instances.
Well, it's interesting because one of the imperatives that was put on me was that we are not going to talk about things that are criminal. So that's why, like, Bill Cosby and Harvey Weinstein, they were not part of this story. That's not cancellation, that's criminal behavior that has been, taken to the courts and proven. So, what? No.
But I agree. There is a very important difference between somebody who gets canceled, fired, whatever it is, because of something ancillary to their job, right? As opposed to, say, a comedian or an artist who's canceled for the actual content of their gig, right? So if a comedian or an artist or writer, whoever, is being shut, that's a little bit scarier in some ways and closer to infringing on free speech.
I wanted to bring up one last comment before we close, and of course you can continue talking about this. We're not ending the conversation. I know there's a lot more to say. Oh, I'm sorry. No, I thought I had the last 2, but thank you. I was just going to bring up, we are sitting here just after the high holidays, and one of the elements in the film is the apology. And sometimes it's cynical, sometimes it's badly done, sometimes it's really well done, but speaking here as we're at a Jewish community center, the importance and thinking about this in this time of year, and I think there is still time. I think the time for apology goes beyond the high holidays, but that importance of having a culture of apologizing, and not just apologizing, but accepting apology, and being able to get a restart every year in that way is really something that I think is a treasure in our community, and something that that sometimes gets lost, and we sometimes forget about the importance to forgive. So this is my message to the community. Forgive me for anything I've done. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for this film.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for being a part of this conversation, and we look forward to seeing you at upcoming screenings. Spread the word.